All right, let's take a deep dive into something you sent my way. It's a conversation between two Japanese people about tourism and cultural identity.
Yeah,
And I thought there were some really interesting bits in there I wanted to dig into with you.
sounds good.
One thing that really stood out to me was this idea of a Niseko bubble.
Uh-huh.
Niseko being a popular ski resort area in Hokkaido.
Yeah, Niseko is, it's kind of going through this boom right now, and it's a lot of foreign tourism
Okay.
driving that boom. And, I think one of the points that they were making in this conversation is that the prices have gotten so high.
Right.
They were talking about a 9,900 yen bowl of uni,
Wow.
2,500 yen for French fries. Like, it's just
That's a lot.
really high end.
That's crazy.
And a lot of these businesses are really almost exclusively catering to foreigners.
Okay, so is this, I mean, I assume it's like a supply and demand thing, but
Yeah.
is this sustainable?
Well, that's part of the conversation that they were having.
Wow.
They were talking about like, well, should we have, a dual pricing system?
Mm-hmm.
Like one price for the locals and one
Oh,
price
interesting.
for the tourists. And, some people were arguing that, yeah, that makes sense,
Yeah.
economically to take advantage of that
Right.
high demand. But
Mm.
others are saying, well, no, that's not fair.
Right, and it's like, I wonder how that plays into how Japan wants to be seen in the world, too. Like,
Yeah.
are you a
Exactly.
developed nation or are you, what are you trying to do?
Yeah. And I think another point that they were bringing up is that, Japan might be underestimating its potential to attract a different type of tourist,
Okay.
higher end tourist.
Mm-hmm.
They were even comparing it to Paris and saying that, people will go to Paris and they'll do like the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and all of that.
Right.
But then if they're really into it, they'll come back again
Okay.
and they'll want to have these more cultural experiences.
Right.
And they were saying Japan could do the same thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're even saying that, wealthy tourists are already doing that.
Interesting.
They're coming to Japan. They're going on these like nature and cultural tours.
Okay.
But the Japanese, they felt, are not doing a good job of presenting these options.
So it's just not packaged very well.
Yeah. They even use the term bad presentation.
Oh, wow.
So it's like they feel like there's this missed opportunity
Yeah.
to really, showcase the beauty and the depth of Japanese culture.
And I mean, that kind of ties in with this idea of the Niseko bubble as well. Like,
Right.
how do you present
Right.
yourself to the rest of the world?
And how do the Japanese see themselves?
Right,
What
exactly.
is Japanese identity?
And then you threw another really interesting thing into the mix here,
Yeah.
which is this Greek mayor.
Yes.
So tell me about this guy.
So one of the speakers was talking about how they visited the Greek island of Lefkada
Uh-huh.
and they met the mayor there. And, just kind of a random encounter. But it turns out that Lefkada is the birthplace of Lefkada O'Hearn,
Oh, wow.
who was this writer who actually became a Japanese citizen.
Okay.
And he was known for his love of Japanese culture.
Cool.
And so, there's this historical connection between the island and Japan.
Right.
But what was interesting was the mayor's perspective,
Okay.
because he was saying that he has this deep respect for Japanese culture.
Oh, okay.
And he kind of even urged Japanese people to have more national pride.
Wow.
He even said that they could learn a lot from their own history.
And this is a Greek guy saying this.
Yeah, Greek guy saying this.
Interesting.
And I thought that was really interesting because, earlier in the conversation,
Right.
they were talking about how they feel like maybe Japanese people have lost touch with their cultural identity.
Right. Like, it's almost the opposite of
That's-
what this guy's saying.
And they were talking about the narrow world that's created by the media
Okay.
and how, it's important to have personal experiences
Mm.
to shape your worldview.
You can't
Yeah.
just, like, read about it in a book.
Right. You have to actually go out there and experience things for yourself,
Yeah.
and then you can start to form your own opinions.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about this kind of conflicting view of tourism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this idea of Japanese identity. And then you mentioned something called yokai charm digging.
Yeah. What is that?
So this is where the conversation takes another interesting turn.
Okay.
It sounds like it's some kind of a personal growth activity,
Okay.
maybe like a workshop or something,
Right.
where they focus on uncovering hidden potential and unique inner charms.
Okay.
And it was through this experience that one of the speakers really discovered the power of art
Interesting.
as a form of communication.
Okay. So what were they doing with art in this yokai charm digging? Were they like making art or?
That's what I'm not totally clear on.
Okay.
But it seemed like they were using art to express deeper meanings
All right.
and to inspire self-discovery.
They even talk about using what they called inspiration art
Okay.
to communicate ideas that words just couldn't fully capture.
So it's like art becomes this other language
Right.
that you can use to communicate things that are hard to put into words.
Yeah, and they seem to conclude that art has this power to transcend language barriers
Oh, okay.
and to create a really profound impact on a personal level.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point, especially when we're talking about Japanese identity
Right.
and how it's perceived by others.
So if art can do all that, maybe art could help bridge that gap.
Right. And help Japanese people rediscover and share their cultural heritage.
Yeah. All right. So we've got these three really interesting threads going on here.
Yeah.
We've got the Niseko bubble.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this question of Japanese identity.
Yeah.
And then we've got this power of art to communicate.
I'm really curious to hear your thoughts so far.
Well, I'm fascinated by this Niseko bubble because it shows how complex this whole tourism thing is.
You know, it's not just about economics. It's also about, like you said, national identity,
Right.
self-perception.
How Japan wants to be seen in the world.
Yeah. And then that Greek mayor, his perspective was really interesting.
Yeah, it was a really unexpected twist.
Yeah.
I mean, he was basically saying, you guys have this amazing culture. You should be proud of it.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me think about, maybe sometimes we don't appreciate what we have
Right.
until someone from the outside points it out to us.
Yeah, and then this art thing, it's like we've stumbled on this really cool idea about how art can be this tool for connection and understanding.
And maybe even a solution to some of the challenges we've been talking about.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got a lot more to unpack here.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So should we take a break and come back?
Yeah, let's do that.
Right.
As we were talking about art transcending language barriers, I was thinking about that yokai charm digging. And I was thinking maybe this has implications for cultural expression more broadly, like if it can help individuals find their own charm.
Right.
Maybe it can help Japan rediscover and share its own hidden charms.
Yeah, like we often hear about Japan in terms of technology and pop culture.
Right.
But there's so much more to it.
So much more. And, Japan has this incredibly rich history of art forms that are intertwined with cultural values and traditions like calligraphy, tea ceremony, traditional music theater. And these are really ways of thinking that are uniquely Japanese.
And it's not just observing them, it's participating in them and understanding the stories that they tell.
It's about experiencing the essence of Japanese culture through art.
Right.
And I think that's where the potential lies, because if Japan can showcase this, then they can create a more authentic and compelling narrative about their cultural identity.
So instead of just going to see like the typical tourist attractions, you're actually immersed.
You're immersed in the culture through these artistic experiences.
Yeah.
Like imagine, walking through a traditional Japanese garden.
Okay.
And you're listening to the sounds of a shakuhachi flute. Or you're witnessing a kabuki performance that tells a timeless story.
Yeah.
It's not just a snapshot. It's a full immersion.
That's so cool.
And think about the ripple effect. Because by exposing people to this, you're sparking curiosity.
Right.
You're inspiring learning and fostering a deeper appreciation for the culture.
You're planting seeds of cultural understanding.
So, it all goes back to this question of how can art help Japanese people rediscover and share their heritage?
Yeah.
How can it reshape perceptions both internally and externally?
That's a big question. Where do we even begin with that?
Well, for one, I think art can be a catalyst for introspection, encourage Japanese people to reconnect with their own traditions and values.
With looking in a mirror and rediscovering the beauty of their reflection.
But it goes beyond self-reflection. There's also an outward-facing aspect.
Right.
Because art has this power to break down stereotypes and misconceptions. By sharing their artistic traditions, they can challenge these preconceived notions and present a more nuanced and authentic image.
It's not just anime and technology.
Exactly. It's about adding layers of understanding complexity, appreciation, showcasing the full spectrum of what it means to be Japanese.
Like creating a tapestry of cultural expression woven together with art history and lived experience.
Who knows what new patterns and connections might emerge from that tapestry?
Right.
Art has a way of sparking those unexpected conversations, forging connections between people from different backgrounds.
That's really cool. But how do we move from these like theoretical possibilities to actually making art a more central part of the story that Japan is telling?
That's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
I think it requires a shift in mindset, a willingness to embrace the power of art, and a commitment to invest in it.
So it's not just recognizing it, it's promoting it and supporting it.
Absolutely. It can start with individual actions, small steps,
Okay.
taken by passionate individuals,
Yeah.
artists, educators, community leaders, everyday citizens. Everyone can play a role.
So it's about finding that spark of inspiration and sharing it with others and letting it grow.
And remember, this whole deep dive was sparked by a single conversation between two people.
That's true.
Imagine if these conversations were happening everywhere.
Right.
If people were actively engaging with these ideas and exploring ways to bring them to life.
That's exciting.
It feels like we're on the cusp of something really special.
Yeah, like a cultural renaissance.
It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Definitely, but the conversation has begun.
The potential is huge.
That's what makes these deep dives so interesting. You never know where they're going to go.
The journey of discovery is just as rewarding as the destination.
Speaking of discoveries, there's one more thing that I wanted to touch on from this conversation, and that is this connection that they made between art and this concept of wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi. It's a core aesthetic principle.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that's really hard to put into words.
Right.
Maybe art can help us understand it.
Okay, let's dive into that. Okay, so we've been talking about how art can help us understand things that are tough to put into words. And now we're going to tackle wabi-sabi, which you said is like that.
It is.
So where do we even begin?
Well, the conversation actually gives us some really good starting points.
Okay.
Imagine you're looking at like a really old tea bowl.
Right.
And it's all cracked and weathered.
Yeah.
But you see beauty in those cracks.
Okay.
Or you're looking at like a stone lantern in a garden and it's covered in moss and the way the light hits it, it's just beautiful.
Okay.
That's wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection in the natural cycle of things.
It's kind of like you know how some people like really love old, worn out jeans more than brand new ones?
Exactly. Because there's a story behind them.
Right.
There's this history. There's this authenticity.
Exactly.
And the speakers were saying that art is a way to really experience this wabi-sabi.
Okay, so instead of me reading a definition of wabi-sabi, I can look at a piece of art and understand it better.
Right, like think about ikebana.
Okay.
The Japanese art of flower arranging.
Yeah.
They use a lot of asymmetrical forms and natural materials. And they even highlight like the wilting and the fading aspects of plants.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's wabi-sabi.
So it's like in Western art, a lot of times we're going for like perfection.
Right. Symmetry, perfect lines.
And wabi-sabi is like the opposite of that.
It's a totally different aesthetic.
That's really cool. And, I'm even thinking about like a Japanese garden with the raked gravel and the stones and the way the trees are pruned.
It's not about controlling nature.
Right.
It's about working with it, highlighting the natural beauty, even the decay.
Yeah. So it's like finding peace with the fact that things are impermanent.
Right.
And finding beauty in every stage. Even the fading ones.
And that's where the connection to Japanese identity comes in. Because wabi-sabi isn't just an aesthetic.
Right.
It's a whole philosophy about life.
Yeah.
It's about accepting the world as it is with all its imperfections.
Okay, so if art can help us understand wabi-sabi, then art can also help us understand Japanese culture.
That's the idea.
That's so cool. We've gone from the Niseko bubble, the Japanese identity, to wabi-sabi.
It's all connected.
It really is. It's amazing. And art is like this thread that runs through it all.
It is. It's this powerful tool for connection and understanding.
And it helps us appreciate beauty in places we might not expect.
Right. Like in the cracks of a tea bowl.
Exactly.
Or in the wilting petals of a flower.
Yeah.
So as you continue to explore and learn, keep wabi-sabi in mind.
Okay.
Look for it not just in art, but in everyday life, in nature, even in yourself.
I love that.
It's a reminder that true beauty often lies in the imperfect and impermanent.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I really appreciate you walking me through all this.
My pleasure.
And you know what's so cool is that all of this came from a conversation between two people.
Yeah, just imagine the conversations that are happening out there that we don't even know about.
And the ideas that are sparking from them.
It's inspiring.
It is, and I think that's a great place to leave it.
I agree.
The conversation had begun.
The potential is limitless.
And the journey of discovery never ends.
Thanks for listening.